Welcome to Get Ripped Collectibles.
What's up, guys? We are back for another week here on the College Pick'em Show. We got week 2 here. So happy to be back for another college football season.
Not registered.
We are without Gator Dave today. He is overseas, living the good life right now. He'll be back with us next week. I do have his picks, though, so make sure to stay till the end to see who he likes in these 12 games that we're about to talk about. Check out the new ticker at the bottom. You'll see the 12 games and the spreads of the 12 that we're going to go over today. You'll see also, unfortunately, over there on Gator Dave, he has the current medal for number 1. He beat me last week. Last week was atrocious. I'm not going to lie to you. I'll throw up the recap real briefly. But, 3-9 over there for me last week. That's absolutely atrocious. So Dave had a formidable 5-7. He had a couple bad breaks on Saturday. I had a whole lot of bad breaks on Saturday. So we're hoping for a better week this week. Obviously, follow us or fade us at your own pleasure or displeasure. All right, so we're going to get into it here, talking week 2. First game we're going to talk about here is UCF Boise State. Line sits at -3 for UCF right now. When it opened and when we talked about it, it was at -3.5, I believe. It might have been even been a little higher. But you got UCF and Gus Malzahn coming off an impressive showing versus Kent State in week 1. They won by 56 at home, and now they have to play Boise State on the blue turf for their first real road test of the year. Kent State, when it struggled again on offense against this UCF team, could never really get anything going. UCF's quarterback, John Reese Plummer, the transfer from Ole Miss, looked solid for most of the game. He was a little shaky with 2 INTs. But the story of this one was UCF's run game and Kent State's inability to stop it. UCF had 5 different guys run for a touchdown in this one and finished with 389 rushing yards for the game. UCF put up over 700 total yards while limiting Kent State to under 150. Now, Kent State, that's not a pushover offense either. They had a high-flying offense last year. The OC went over to Colorado, followed Dion to Colorado. He's got those guys rolling. So for them to put that number on them, I mean, granted, it's Kent State. I get it, but that's still impressive for this UCF defense. Boise State, on the other hand, is coming off a 37-point road loss to Washington. Like I said, they're back on the blue turf. That's their first home game this year. They were on the road for week 1 against Washington. Boise kept it close early in that game. They were leading at the end of the first quarter 6-0. But in the second quarter, the Huskies kind of just put it on them. They were able to put up 28. They got up 28-12 at half. Boise kept in reasonable distance or so and headed into the fourth quarter. But they were the score was like 35-19. So, I mean, they were down 16s, 2 possessions technically. They were still in the game. But in the fourth quarter, it was absolutely all Washington. They outscored them 21-0 and ultimately got the victory. Washington's quarterback, Michael Penix, looked like the potential Heisman candidate that everybody has predicted him to be, throwing for 450 yards and 5 touchdowns with 0 turnovers. But what worried me about Washington's offense in that game was the run game, and that's a compliment to Boise State's defense. Washington ran the ball 18 times in this one, only for 78 yards total. So Boise was able to really stop that run. It was kind of, but because of that, they left open these spots for Michael Penix, and he was able to eat them up. Boise was able to put up over 400 yards of total offense in that game, 21 first downs, and had more time of possession than Washington, but lost the turnover battle with 2 INTs. Boise's going to have another test this week with UCF in that rush game, but I think they'll be ready for it. What concerns me about Boise is their inability to stop the pass. Plumlee, while he has struggled before with INTs, I think he's able to do enough here to get it done, but I expect this one to be close. I went back and forth here kind of on what play I like the most between the over 57 or UCF money line. I think Gus Malzahn will have something up his sleeve in this one. But I also think Andy Avalos, Boise State's head coach and a former Boise player, he's going to have his guys fired up. So I wouldn't be surprised if this one's close early. It's a bit of a shootout. I think he's eager to get revenge. His first game and his first career loss came to Gus Malzahn and UCF down in Orlando back in 2021. I'm going to go ahead and stick with my original pick here. I'm going to take UCF money line, but I'd watch for some fireworks in this one. Gator Dave, I believe, is on UCF as well, but we can show his picks at the end and kind of do a full recap. Because unfortunately, it was a good week for him to miss, because I think we're going to agree on a good bit of these. Next game we're going to talk here is UAB Georgia Southern. Georgia Southern is a -7 favorite. They are at home. This is Trent Dilfer's first year at UAB, and it couldn't have started better for him. You know, he handled a good FCS school in North Carolina A&T at home and looked like a completely revamped team from last year. They hadn't had a lot of returning starters. They only had 7 from last year's 6-6 team, but that quarterback was damn near lights out. I mean, about as good as you could ask. He was 38 for 41 passing for nearly 300 yards and 3 touchdowns. So not a lot of yardage for that amount of throws, but keeping it conservative, getting the ball to his playmakers, letting them get the first down, make a play, make somebody miss. It's all you can really ask for. UAB sacked A&T 6 times and outgained them on offense by almost 300 yards, 295 yards.
SWB
so that's a little bit about UAB and what they're bringing to the table here. Georgia Southern played Citadel last week and got the victory. They handled them pretty good. Citadel has struggled in recent years. Having not had a winning record since 2016, but they still play with pride. They still play to the final whistle. It's a military school, so they're disciplined. They take pride in what they do. Southern shut them out 34-0. 2 more quick notes about these teams, and I'll get to the pick. First, these 2 teams, UAB and Southern, they played last year in Birmingham. Now, granted, that was not a Trent Dilfer-led team, but it was a Clay Helton-led team for Georgia Southern. UAB was able to win the turnover battle by 3 and won the game because of it. I think that gets corrected here. I think Georgia Southern gets the turnovers in check. I think a year under their belt and another year under Clay Helton's system, they're confident. Another note is that impressive win UAB had week 1. The numbers are a little misleading. A&T only attempted 8 passes throughout that entire game. So obviously that, limited their options. They ran the ball mostly, couldn't really throw it. Southern, on the other hand, threw it 37 times against Citadel in their 34-0 shutout. So you could probably see where I'm leaning here. Clay Helton has Southern's offense and defense rolling. This is a revenge game for Southern at home in the Borough. It's a night game in the Borough. UAB won. They beat them by, I believe, double digits last year, 2 scores. It's going to be rowdy. The Borough gets going for night games. Give me Statesboro with the -7 and to get the win in the cover. All right. Moving along here, we got Cincinnati, Pittsburgh. We're going to discuss here next. And I hope to – so I'm trying to add something – side note, I'm trying to add something to these streams sort of every week as we go through the season. As you can see, we got the ticker on the bottom. We kind of move stuff around a little bit.
Capture,
any suggestions you guys have, please drop them in the comments. Make sure to like. Make sure to subscribe. It really helps us out. Really does with the algorithms and stuff. That's all we ask. These are free picks, free advice. You can ask us anything. You can fade us, You can dislike us. Do whatever you need to do. Just interact with us. That's all we're looking for. But every Thursday night, you'll catch me and Gator Dave here, 7:30 p.m. And hopefully next week, I'm hoping to have some team graphics, something along those lines when we start talking about the team. So it's a little bit easier to find through the video so you know what part is what. But we're working on it. I'm a one-man show here, all right? All right, moving on here. We got Cincinnati, Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh's the favorite. They're playing at home. They're -7.5. Cincinnati was not high on my list. If you watch the preview show, you know that. But they looked great last week. They beat Eastern Kentucky. Now, granted, Eastern Kentucky is, an FCS school. But they had over 400 passing yards and over 200 rushing yards. So it was pretty handed. They led 42-7 at the half. Emory Jones, the former Florida quarterback, the former Arizona State quarterback, now at Cincinnati. He looked like the prospect that those schools thought they were getting when he came into them. He threw 19 completions out of 23 attempts for 345 yards, 5 touchdowns, 0 interceptions. He did fumble once, but he also scored 2 on the ground. He had 7 total touchdowns in this game. On the flip side, Pittsburgh looked good as well. They beat Wofford 42-7, again, FCS, and not allowing a single rushing yard in this one while putting up almost 500 total on offense. Pitt was up 28-0 at half. Basically had it in the bag. Djokovic, the transfer from Boston College, the quarterback for Pitt, he was getting it done through the air and the ground. He looked solid. He looked consistent, and he looked like a quarterback, for Pat Narduzzi's system. I think Cincy has a rude awakening this week. They're coming off real high last week, blowing the brakes off of Eastern Kentucky, having fun. But they're going to face a real defensive test here in this Narduzzi defense and with Pitt. It's going to be interesting to see if Emory Jones can keep that going, keep that hot streak going that he had in week 1. I don't think he's going to be able to do that. Give me Pat Narduzzi's defense and the Panthers to get the cover and the win, -7 in this one. All right, moving on. We got Utah, Baylor. Baylor starting quarterback Blake Shapen is out, so the backup transfer from Mississippi State is expected to start. He threw 50% and an interception in week 1 in their loss against Texas State. Cam Rising could play in this one. But to me, both quarterbacks showed that they're more than capable of leading this team in the time being against Florida that week 1 between Johnson and Barnes. I think they're going to be able to have it covered if he's not able to go. Baylor could have been looking ahead, into this game, losing to Texas State, but giving up 42 on defense for a Dave Aranda defense. You got to remember, Dave Aranda came from LSU. And those dominant defenses under Ed Orgeron when LSU won the title with Joe Burrow, that was Dave Aranda. Dave Aranda spurred that team. He's an energy guy. He's a fire guy. For them to have 42 put on him, I wouldn't think that practice this week was very fun down there in Waco. TJ Finley, not only did they give up 42 in the game, it was 28 in the first half, right? So they kind of corrected it in the second, but it's a lot of points. TJ Finley, the former Auburn quarterback, went off on Baylor. 22 completions on 30 attempts for nearly 300 yards, 3 touchdowns, and a rushing touchdown. I think Utah's backup, Johnson, dude looked electric. He moved like Lamar against Florida week 1. He made some kind of mental errors. He's a little reckless with the ball when he runs, so that kind of scares me fumble-wise. Or INT-wise when they do decide to, give him a throw package. But I think his mobility matches what TJ Finley was able to do a lot against this Baylor team. So, and they had a real issue stopping him. So give me Utah -7 here to kind of keep it rolling, and it's going to seriously put Dave Aranda on the hot seat moving forward. All right, next one we're talking here. I actually don't know why I need these because I'm not listening to Dave. All right, next one we're talking here is going to be Iowa State, the barn burner out in the farmlands. Kirk Ferentz, couple quick stats here for you. Kirk Ferentz is 13-10 in his career versus Iowa State. Matt Campbell, Iowa State's head coach, is 1-5 versus Iowa, with his first win being last year. They won 10-7 as a 3-point underdog. Before that, Iowa was on a 6-game win streak against Iowa State. Iowa State under Matt Campbell is 8-20 versus ranked opponents in the top 25. Iowa is ranked this week. Both teams have 15 or more returning starters, so a lot of experience on both sides. Hunter Deckers, Iowa State's projected quarterback, is out right now for gambling investigation. I doubt he plays another snap. So now they got starter Rocco Becht, but he looked good week 1. He went 10 for 13 for 2 touchdowns. They didn't ask him to throw a lot, but when he did, he was able to get it done. But their offense struggled, to say the least, against Northern Iowa. They only scored 3 touchdowns on offense for the entire game. And then on the flip side, you got Cade McNamara, the transfer quarterback from Michigan, taking over at Iowa at quarterback, but he didn't overly impress me. He went 17 for 30. Under 200 yards, but did have 2 touchdowns. Iowa's rush game struggled as well. Only had 88 yards, and the defense actually gave up over 100 yards rushing to Utah State. Utah State actually out statistic-wise Iowa a lot if you look at the box score in this one. So, I mean, Iowa could easily be 0-1 right now, had a couple of things gone differently in that game. Both teams definitely had their struggles, though, week one, which is why the over-under is currently sitting around 36. I expect both teams to try to get the run going early in this one, but I think Cade McNamara is ultimately the difference maker in this. And while I'm not really digging where this number is kind of sitting, I think it's at Iowa -4 right now, if I want to say. I'm going to go Iowa money line in this one, just to be on the safe side. I think Iowa's able to get it done, but it's going to be one that you are not going to want to watch. Oregon, Texas Tech is going to be our next game here. And again, on the ticker on the bottom, you can actually see, I believe, the order that we're going to talk about them. So you can see kind of what's coming up next, and as far as that for time reference as well. So Oregon, Texas Tech, through the first quarter of week one, Texas Tech looked exactly how I had them in the preview. They were a serious playoff contender, serious Big 12 contender, but by the end of the game, I mean, they're anything but right now. They are on everybody's shit list. They started that game up 17-0 on Wyoming. When I looked at it, I thought that game was in the bag, didn't have to worry about it. It was about to be a blowout. They were going to handle them, 42-7, something like that. It didn't happen. So they ended up losing that game to Wyoming, for those that missed it, 33-35 in double overtime at Wyoming. So it was in the altitude, maybe that played a factor. I don't really know. But Texas Tech's quarterback looked great. Tyler Show, he looked good. But the Red Raiders really struggled to get the run game going. They're running for less than 100 yards for the entire game. And the defense gave up over 170 on the ground to Wyoming. Oregon scored on the other side. Oregon handled Portland State. They scored within the first 4 minutes of their week one game. Portland State followed that score up with a touchdown of their own. But from then on out, it was just all Oregon. Oregon eventually won 81-7. They had some big plays in the rushing game. They had a bunch of guys running hard and running heavy. The dominant stops on defense had this team rolling. They were up 50-7 at halftime, and they ended up posting over 700 total yards for the entire game. I think Oregon's coming into a tough spot here in Lubbock against a team who looked like a shell of themselves for the last 3 quarters of that Wyoming game. I think this one could go down to the wire. It worries me a little bit, and I think it could turn out to be a shootout down there in Lubbock. My ultimate worry, though, is Texas Tech's run game and their lack of defense towards the run game. I think those are the differences in this one. Eugene and those Oregon Ducks, they got a carousel of running backs up there that can tuck it. So give me the Ducks to go down there to Texas and leave with a cover and leave with a win, -7. We got Ole Miss, Tulane next. Ole Miss is a -7.5 favorite. They're at Tulane. Actually, it's down to -7 now. Ole Miss -7. So Ole Miss scored 3 times in the first 5 minutes of their game in week 1 against Mercer. 3 times in the first 5 minutes. I said that correctly. Mercer would also score in those first 5 minutes, but that's literally the only touchdown or productivity they had for the entire game. After that, Ole Miss ended up winning 73-7. Ole Miss's quarterback, Jackson Dart, was absolutely dealing, and when he was done, Oklahoma State transfer Spencer Sanders picked up right where he left off. Dart had 4 touchdowns. Sanders had 2. Story of the day was Trey Harris at wide receiver for these guys. He finished with 6 catches, but 4 of them went for touchdowns. The defense gave up less than 250 total yards while being on the field 10 minutes longer than their offense was. Ole Miss also won the turnover battle 3-1. Tulane on the opposite side played a great game against South Alabama. I was on South Alabama last week, and Tulane punished me for it. South Alabama had a shot in that one, but they made some mental errors. Tulane's defense was stout, and they couldn't get it done. Tulane's quarterback was also really good. He went 14 for 15 for 294 yards and 4 touchdowns. The defense was able to hold South Alabama, like I said, to under 80 rushing yards total and under 270 total passing and rushing for the game. And fumbles were a problem for Tulane, though. They gave up 3 in this game, so kind of look for that to potentially be an issue moving forward if they don't get that corrected pretty quickly. Luckily for them, though, South Alabama in this one also coughed up 3 fumbles of their own and threw in 2 interceptions for good measure. They made a lot of mistakes. 5 turnovers in a game is really hard to come back from. I think Ole Miss is able to keep Tulane in check while forcing a couple turnovers in this. I think the line has moved a little bit from where it was, and it's down to 7. So give me Ole Miss to get the win in the cover, -7 down in Tulane. This one is not going to be for the weak-hearted, though. Tulane, led by Willie Fritz, they are not going to quit until that 60-minute whistle is blown. Expect a good game early and a good game till the end in this one. Next game we're going to talk here is North Texas FIU. FIU is 1-1 on the year. They've played 2 games already. They had a week 1 game and a week 0 game. They lost to Louisiana Tech, and they won last week against Maine. FIU's offense is a little volatile right now. They don't really know what their identity is. This is what I mean. Week 0 versus Louisiana Tech, they had 178 rushing yards, but just 4 passing yards. They lost 17-22. Last week, they had 292 passing yards, but just 13 rushing yards. But they won against Maine. Maine actually beat them in every stat category but the scoreboard. North Texas, on the flip side, has some pretty big noise behind them this year, and hosting a Pac-12 team at home had all the rumblings of an upset. I know I was on them, as well as a couple others that I know. But North Texas was absolutely unable to stop a nosebleed in that game. They looked atrocious. Their defense looked terrible. They didn't look physical. The offense was able to keep them in it in the first half, but the defense could just not get enough stops, couldn't get off the field. Cal ran for over 350 yards on this North Texas defense, and they threw for over 300 as well, while limiting North Texas to just 225 total yards in the game. North Texas's quarterback, Stone Earl, had some promising throws, going 12 for 19 for 174 yards and 3 touchdowns, but he also did throw 2 interceptions that really cost his team by giving a bad field position to a Cal team that was already rolling on offense. And his defense just could not get out of those tough spots that they were put in. I think North Texas is able to correct that this week against FIU. You got to remember FIU, most people didn't have them winning more than 3 games this year, maybe. This is a team that does not get a lot of funding. They do not get a lot of help from their athletic department or their school as far as recruiting, as far as equipment, facilities. So this is a true get-it-out-the-mud school. They are actually going to be rocking some new jerseys. They got some new jerseys this year. One of them is the variation called Biscayne Blue. They're going to be rocking them this one. They're sweet. They're light blue, baby blue. They look really clean. But I think the mean green from North Texas get it done in this one. Give me the cover here, and this one's actually gone up. We got them at -12.5, but last time I saw it was up to -13.5. So make sure you try to get it under that 14 number if you can. If it's above that 14 number, I'd probably stay away. 14 and under, I think you're okay, but 14.5 and up, I wouldn't touch it. Moving right along here, we got about 4 games left. Nebraska, Colorado is the next one. Colorado is the hottest team in America right now. Everybody's talking about them. It is the most bet team in America. Not only is it the most bet team in America, but out of all the week 1 games and all the week 1 bets that you could place on either side NFL-wise, in the league for week 1, Colorado has more bets on them money line to win this game. That's insane. That's an insane amount of money and insane amount of liability for Vegas in this one. They need Nebraska to win, otherwise they will hurt. They hurt last week when Colorado beat TCU as a +800 underdog. The line has had some serious movement in this one. It opened at some places at -8 over the summer in Nebraska's favor. It's at -3 now for Colorado. It got up to a -5 for Colorado before coming back down. Everybody and their mama, including our own Gator Dave, was saying how bad Colorado was going to be and it was going to blow up in Deion's face. I was somewhat of a believer. I had them going 6-6, so I have them getting bowl eligible. I did not. I can fully admit this. I did not have them winning that game against TCU. I thought it would be a good game, and I was excited to see it. But, man, they played their hearts out, left everything on the field. You could tell that had been eating away at them for months, all off season, everything that people had been saying. It's going to be interesting to see if they can maintain that chip on their shoulder into this one, going against a Nebraska team that really, really struggled on offense last week. I mean, they are 100% still a work in progress under new head coach Matt Rule. They played about the ugliest game on offense that I saw out of week 0 or week 1 this year against Minnesota, who up until the fourth quarter seemed like neither team really wanted to win this one. Nebraska had fluke touchdowns. Minnesota had fluke touchdowns. It was an absolute terrible game to watch. Typical Big Ten football. Nebraska's defense came to play, though. I mean, from the perspective of that, Minnesota's defense was in my mind. Nebraska they couldn't really get anything going on offense. Jeff Sims had some INTs. He had some fumbles, I believe. But Nebraska's defense was stout. I mean, they were giving Minnesota problems. Jeff Sims, like I said, he forced way too many errors. I think I don't know. I keep going back and forth with this one because it's a matter of playing, in my opinion, heart over mind. My mind tells me that I should be on Nebraska 100% because all the money is on Colorado. And if you fade the public, there's a good chance, most likely than not, that you'll be successful in that 9 times out of 10, especially when the number is as high as it is towards one side, like it is in this one. But man, I can't do it. I'm drinking the Kool-Aid. I'm riding the Dion train here, and give me Colorado to get the win. I think this one has all the potential to be another shootout for Colorado. It's a matter of if Colorado's defense can make these stops against Nebraska, but Nebraska's offense looked pretty bad. So we'll see what happens, but give me Buffs, give me Shadur Sanders, give me Travis Hunter to connect for at least one TD. I think the Heisman hype is real, and I think it continues. So give me the Buffs. Give me the Buffs money line in this one to get it done at home in Dion's first home game. That place is going to be rowdy. Looking forward to it.
SWP audio capture not registered.
Notre Dame is playing at NC State. Notre Dame is a -7 favorite. I'll be honest, I was not impressed at all with NC State against UConn last week. I was on NC State. If you watched the week 1 show that we did, me and Gator Dave, I believe, were both on NC State. They looked atrocious. UConn in the first half, they were physically dominant over NC State. The quarterback was running hard. Running over guys. The running backs were running hard. The offensive line had great get off the ball. They were establishing the line of scrimmage, establishing their presence and their dominance. It was bad. It was really bad. And then, a couple plays went NC State's way. I think they had a tipped ball for an INT, some momentum swings. Brennan Armstrong played his ass off. He's the reason that they won that game. I think NC State should be very fortunate that they had him after Devin Leary decided to transfer out of there. Look, NC State is very familiar with Sam Hartman as well as Notre Dame. They've played them a couple times since they've kind of done the ACC gig where Notre Dame's kind of a partner and they're kind of in it, but at the same time they're kind of not. It's kind of got their foot in, foot out kind of deal. But with Sam Hartman, NC State has played them 3 times. He's played them 3 times in the last 3 years. And Sam Hartman has not done well against NC State, to say the least. He's 1-2 in those 3 games. He's gone 72 for 131, 923 yards, 6 touchdowns, 6 interceptions. So he's pretty accurate with the ball still. Typical Sam Hartman. He's putting up 300-yard games. But those INTs are an issue. He's averaging 2 a game right now against NC State. And that sort of was the rule of the thumb in those 3 games that kind of was the difference in they won or lost. I think one year they won. One year they lost 45-42. I think the next year Hartman and Wake got their revenge on NC State. I think they won 45-42. And then last year he lost to NC State in that one. But ultimately, I think the biggest difference in this one is Sam Hartman. But not only Sam Hartman, but his offensive line at Notre Dame. These guys are massive. They're as big and as physical as they come in at least the 3 years of college. They all have at least 3 years college of experience under their belt. The center is a graduate, and he's the smallest guy on the line at 6'3", 305 pounds. They're all over 300 pounds. These are massive individuals. This line is made to protect the quarterback. They're made to establish the line of scrimmage and move the chains. I do not think they have any problem with that here after what I saw in that UConn-NC State game. Give me the Fighting Irish minus the 7 to continue their run to get back to the college football playoff this year under Marcus Freeman and Sam Hartman to make his case for the number 1 pick overall next year. Potentially a Heisman. All right, we got 2 games left here. We're going to move to the biggest game of the week. We got Texas, Alabama. This is one I absolutely 100% was going back and forth with when it came down to it because it's just, it's a complete toss-up. These are 2 teams that a lot of people have projected to go to the playoff this year. And the stat that everybody harbors on and everybody knows is Nick Saban's record against his former assistants, sitting currently at 28-2, which is just absolutely nuts. When you really think about it, that's crazy. I saw Steve Sarkisian. He was in an interview this week, and he was asked about that record, and if he was going to get asked about it this week and what he thought about it. And his reply was, what's Nick Saban's record against all the guys that aren't former assistants?
Not registered.
And it got a laugh out of the guys that asked it, because it's a great comeback. That's a tremendous point. Nick Saban's record is phenomenal. It speaks for itself. It doesn't really matter if you're a former assistant or not. Nick Saban's Alabama team and Nick Saban's team, anywhere he's been really, besides the Miami Dolphins, has come to play. So these teams that he coaches as Alabama, they're disciplined, they're physical, they get after it for the full 60 minutes. And ultimately, Sarkisian is trying to recreate that at Texas. He's trying to implement what he learned at Alabama, for being OC under Saban for a couple years. He's trying to do the same thing that Kirby Smart has been able to do at Georgia, take that Alabama way and implement it into another program, another big-time name that had struggled for recent years. Texas, they started a little shaky week 1 against Rice. Started a little slow, but they ultimately ended up pulling away in the third quarter. They got a 37-10 win. Rice was really unable to get the run game going at all, and former Georgia quarterback, West Virginia quarterback, feels like he's been around forever and pretty much all over the world. JT Daniels, he struggled. He struggled in his consistency. He was throwing a pair of interceptions. Texas took a big step backward, though, in the run game, and it's obviously apparent. They're losing Bijan Robinson, first-round draft pick, who was a Heisman hopeful next year and a Heisman frontrunner had he come back to Texas this year. They didn't have a single rusher hit the 60-yard mark in this one. Now, granted, you got to think that, they were playing it pretty vanilla against Rice. They don't want to give Bama too much stuff for next week, and vice versa. Bama didn't have any rushers go crazy either in their game against Middle Tennessee State, which I'll talk about in a second. So you got to think it was a little vanilla, and they wanted to make sure guys got some time, didn't get hurt, things like that.
Registered.
But it's something to consider and something to notice, in my opinion, when you got these Hogs down there in Texas with a specific NIL set up for just the offensive line. For them to not have really rushing success against the Rice team. Granted, it was hot as hell on that field. I think it was like 115 during the game, so you got to think that they were out there dying on that motherfucker. But, excuse me. I don't know. That's something for me to keep an eye out, especially in this game against an Alabama front that is always stout. Quinn Ewers, he looked good. He looked like the potential Heisman guy that everybody has said he would be. Threw for over 250, threw 3 touchdowns while he was in the game. On the flip side, Alabama, like I said, they were playing Middle Tennessee State. They got up on them early, and they never looked back. They kept the offense relatively vanilla as well, but they still end up winning 56-7 in an absolutely dominant performance of the Blue Raiders. The Tide had an even attack, running and throwing for over 200 yards each. Jalen Milroe looks smooth at quarterback. He looked like he's been there forever as their starter. He had the offense clicking. He had 5 total touchdowns in this one, while also leading them to an impressive 10 for 13 on third down conversions. Obviously, he didn't play the entire game. Taylor Buckner, the transfer from Notre Dame, he got in there a little bit as well. But still, 10 for 13 on third downs for that offense. That's tremendously impressive, especially when they kept it relatively vanilla against this team. The Tide defense was able to force 2 turnovers and 8 punts to go along with that offensive performance. This is obviously going to be the real first test for either team. First road test for Texas. Bama, played home last week, so they got another home game here. You look at last year and how close Texas got to getting the upset at home against Alabama and that Bryce Young-led team.
Not registered.
But that's the thing. Bryce Young is no longer there. Bijan Robinson is no longer there for Texas. They've lost some key guys on both sides. I think 7 is just a little bit too much in this one. I have Texas, doing very well this year, making my college football playoff, as you would have seen in the preview if you guys watched that, or the playoff preview video as well. I think Saban and the Tide ultimately probably get the win here because it's just what they do in these spots, it seems. But I'm going to go ahead and take Texas and the +7 to get the cover in an absolutely great game. 100% should be in the primetime slot. It deserves it. However, the final game of the preview has arrived. We are talking the 3:30 ABC matchup, Texas A&M at Miami Hurricanes. This is going to be a revenge game for Miami. Before I even get into that, I just want to say the first drive that Miami had, opening drive of the season, first drive of the game against Miami, Ohio, it was amazing. I was blown away. We looked like a completely different offense, especially up front, in the last 15 years. Haven't seen anything close to that in Miami football. After that first drive, it had its moments, but it definitely had its moments where he was like, oh, okay, there's that team. I got it. Ultimately we dominated. We got the win versus Miami of Ohio in a convincing fashion. Tyler Van Dyke looked like his old self. I would like to see a little more zip on some of those balls. Some of those balls, he kind of just lobs it up a little bit too nonchalantly for me, and he paid for it on his interception. Other than that, he plays some absolute dimes. One down the right side, I remember. Colby Young was able to make some plays. Wide receivers look good. The biggest story is our offensive line. They were creating massive holes for our running backs. They were getting 5-7 yards like it was that. I was very, very impressed with what Mirabal and Cristobal have been able to do in year 2 on that offensive line. You can 100% tell the presence. And Coach Feld and his strength and conditioning program, you can tell, their fourth quarter program this year and the off-season workout strength program, it's really paying off. So kudos to those guys. I'm super excited to see, where we go this year and where we go in the future. We're not back by any means. It was Miami of Ohio. I'm fully aware of that. But this is the real test this week, in my opinion. This lets us know, win or lose, they got to compete in this one against Texas A&M. It's going to be an absolute grind. It's a revenge slot for Miami. We went to Texas A&M last year in College Station. We lost 17-9. One possession game. We had opportunities in that one. We just couldn't get it done on offense. Defense did about as much as they could in that one, holding that offense, SEC offense. 5-star studded roster that Jimbo was able to put together. They held them in check, but the offense just couldn't get it done, and ultimately there were changes made. Miami brought in the new OC, also the new DC, and you see how it looked in Miami against Miami of Ohio. Granted, Shane Dawson, the OC, said it was vanilla. It was super vanilla. They wanted to make sure it was vanilla, and they still looked good. So I'm really excited to see what we bring out in this home game. But again, the increase in size on the O-line and the speed on defense, the closing speed by our linebackers was amazing. It was amazing. I love to see it. I haven't seen it in a long time. I told my buddy the other day, I want to get to the point where
audio capture,
I can watch a Miami, Florida versus a MAC School 10 and not be on the edge of my seat the entire game. I would love to be able to sit back, drink a beer, relax, have some wings, talk with my friends, talk with my girlfriend, and be able to enjoy the game. But, I would love to get back to that. But until then, we're on the edge of the seat. We're watching every movement. We're watching every motion. We're watching the players. We're watching the coaches. I mean, I'll do that anyway. But golly, it's, I think we're on the right path, though. I think we're on the right path. In Mario Cristobal, I trust. I'm sorry, I went on a Gator Dave tangent there, like he does, and I apologize. He's not here to stop me, so I got to get it in while I can. Back to the game here. I'm sorry. Texas A&M opened as 7-point favorites in this one. The line was, I think, a little bit even higher than that when they first opened in the offseason. It's going to be an orange out in Miami. They're asking all the fans to wear orange. It's going to be a 3:30 game, so it'll be warm. It'll go into night, sort of in that fourth quarter. This is a massive game for the trajectory of both of these teams, Texas A&M and Miami, for the rest of their season, and kind of what path and what team that they're going to be this year, in my opinion. The winner of this game, I think they finish with at least 9 wins on the year. The loser of this game, it could be another rough one. I mean, it could be another 7-win season you're talking about. So that's a big swing and a big difference for the momentum, the recruiting, everything moving forward. So it's a big time game. This would 100% be the primetime slot again if Alabama, Texas was not playing this week. For Texas A&M, Weigman looked good week 1. He looked good last year when he took over for them in that later half of the season for Haynes King. His connection with wide receiver Evan Stewart, the former 5-star, it is real for Texas A&M. That dude puts up numbers. He's a big body out there on the outside, goes up and gets jump balls, can get separation on the line. So those pieces worry me, but I think that if Miami can force Texas A&M into some difficult third down situations, if we're able to get a stop early and, first and second down, get a sack, I think Miami can get the cover in this one. I look for us to be competitive. That's the main thing for me in this is I just want us to compete. I want us to compete for that full 60 minutes. I want Texas A&M to feel us. Miami of Ohio's head coach made a note in an interview in this past week that his guys were banged up. They felt that game against Miami when they came down there. They established their physical presence against them, and the Redhawks were feeling for it. I need that. I need that against the Aggies. I need them to feel our physical presence and them go, oh, shit, that is not an ACC team. That is not who people talk about with Miami. That's a team that they kicked our ass, and that's what I'm looking for. So give me effort. Give me Cristobal. Give me the Fighting Canes. It's all about you, baby. Let's go. All right, so I have one more as well. We had another game on the line. We had UConn and Georgia State as part of our games. We kind of swapped it out for one of these other ones late, but I had a full write-up on it. I just could not pick a side. I was back and forth between UConn plus 3.5 and the under 54. I'm not going to dive too deep in it because I want to keep this video, potentially under 45 minutes, but I like both of those sides if you're getting wild and crazy. And you're looking at something, UConn, Georgia State, give me UConn plus 3.5 and the under 54 in that one. All right, real quick, please, again, remember to like and subscribe. Drop a comment below. Tell us who you like this week. Tell us who you don't like this week on our picks. We would really love to hear from you. This is our pick recap this week, and as you can see, me and Gator Dave are liking a lot of the same things, so you can take that for what it is. It might be good, it might be bad, but we pretty much agree on everything. The only things we don't, as you can see, is going to be Cincinnati, Pittsburgh. He is on the Bearcats, I'm on the Panthers, and the Roll Tide versus those Longhorns of Texas. I'm on Texas and the Burnt Orange, and he is on the Crimson Tide of Alabama. So we will see you guys next week. Good luck in your bets. Good luck in your games. Enjoy it. College football is back, baby. Embrace it while it's here. It's not going to be here for long. And again, like, subscribe, drop a comment below. Shout out Gator Dave. We love you. Can't wait to get you back next week. Look forward to getting back to our shows live and having our first live show of the year in week 3. Thank you again for everybody that was watching. Go Canes, baby, and good luck this week.